welcome to the Pluto sphere.
Connecting decentralized technologies to the global economy.
We are back to bring you the latest from the leading commanders in the crypto space.
And this week we're welcoming a couple of industry legends from a project very close to our hearts. Introducing Ian Hambleton, CEO, and Russ Harding, Chief Creative Officer at Resurgence Game, a joint venture with Pluto Digital. Resurgence is the product of Emergent Games, which is a leading metaverse and blockchain games studio based in London. It brings together industry veterans from PlayStation, Activision, NC Soft, with blockchain technologists from Pluto Labs, Resurgence. And together, we'll be delivering AAA gameplay experience for its audience. Welcome, Ian and Russ. It's about to have you both on. Can we start by talking about the game-first philosophy of Resurgence?
We as a team come very much from gaming.
Yeah.
There's 65 of us all in, and a big chunk of those are from AAA game studios, PlayStation, Sumo, Codemasters, lots of those different places. And that's quite unusual, weirdly, in crypto and Web3 at the moment. There's a lot of teams that say they're making games and they haven't got anyone on the team that does that. But really, the reason we've sort of arrived at this philosophy of game first is that fundamentally, whenever these new technology revolutions come in, that technology is a amplifier, but you cannot get away from the fact that a rubbish game is still a rubbish game and no one want to play it. And enjoyment and fun is really 80% of the mission. And so, we think that's really important, and it's something we hold ourselves to account on. We want to be the good actors within this world of Web3. I know Russ particularly wants to make sure that Resurgence is like the poster child of amazing AAA Web3 games. And and so that philosophy, so it's about really making sure the game's fun and making sure the blockchain and the Web3 elements are there, but they're not the main reason you go there. I suppose we are trying to encourage the 2.7 billion casual gamers that are currently not in blockchain games into blockchain, and we think you do that by making amazing games.
I think that also reflects heavily in the roadmap that you guys have set out as well, especially over the next 2 years. We've got a realistic timeline of how a Web2 AAA game would be built, even if it wasn't on the blockchain. So Can you maybe just divulge a little bit more as to why your roadmap is not reflecting any other crypto games that we've seen coming through?
Yeah, I think last year a lot of people came out and said they'd make a AAA game in 6 months, which is just a lie, right? So, the starts of a good AAA game will be 2.5 years in development. But we appreciate there's a natural tension with the crypto audience where they are a bit more time sensitive. So what we decided to do is almost live our development out in the open by building towards this like multiplayer AAA experience, like in about two and a bit years, but along that journey showcasing lots of different bits of content, lots of mini games. Well, actually some of them aren't even that mini games, like the hacker sim that we're developing that will launch very early next year.
Super exciting.
That's like a full-on game in itself. So we've tried to basically do those two things, not compromise the AAA game and what we're doing, but at the same time be delivering stuff all the time.
Nice.
You really, really are 100% delivery stuff all the time. Like, we've got the likes of Kwebbelkop, Cowboys of Crypto, BAFTAS revealing some very exciting things in the coming weeks. Let's discuss the Gen Zero Cryotag NFT.
For us early on, I mean, just to cover off, the game it's not an old existing game that's been brought out from the past. This is a totally new experience, and we wanted to make sure that if we were going to be game first, we'd embrace everything. So the Cryotag, even though is a very early NFT, but it accompanies the story and lore of Resurgence. So as we go along, we've created this highly valuable item, which is these series of cryotags, because everyone in our world, Resurgence, will receive a cryotag, but these are very, very special. And these will give you access to everything along the route of our roadmap. It'll also introduce you into the world and the story and the lore. Later on, it'll be your kind of key, I suppose, to your cryopod and lots of other sort of things. But we've, again, being game first, we wanted to make sure that production values were really, really high and that we'd really thought through what the utility of these tags would be. And again, not to promise like fake items that wouldn't be useful in the game later on or would badly balance out the game. So we wanted to make sure that whatever we promised was sort of like balanced and had real value.
Are we going to start hearing about that? So there's a lot of things happening on your socials at the moment, with especially the end. That's something that's been popping up a lot this week and the last few days of last week. Is that something that's going to be announced as well? Maybe a bit of utility in the NFT, or are we saving that for later down the line? What is the end? What's going on your socials at the moment?
The end is very much our beginning, and like that really will be a great opportunity for everyone in the community to get into the story and lore of Resurgence and start communicating with us as a team, because we really want to build that community that build into it. And we will be. There are two things probably happening. So the end is the story of the world of Resurgence, and we're going to start introducing the cryotag, and we'll start announcing that utility over the coming month.
Yeah, why is it the end? What drove the end?
Oh, well, this is bad news, guys. I'm afraid there's some...
It gets worse, actually. So the end is set in 10 years into our future, so quite near future.
Just 10 years.
And unfortunately, we've ended up with an ecological meltdown due to like a number of things that are happening within the world. They probably sound really familiar. In fact, everything we investigate as to what may be our humanity's main downfall seems to be happening now. So it's a little bit scary, but a number of things bring humanity to its end, really. And the end explores that, and a couple of key characters that you can find across the internet will start telling you the story of how that comes about and how eventually there is a plan that a group of survivors will be placed into cryo status and in cryopods. And then in 1,000 years' time, when the Earth has recovered and it's been rid of us, so it can come back in its full glory, that world will be the world that those people will enter. So imagine like falling asleep now and waking up in 1,000 years' time and everything's changed.
That's some of the imagery we can see behind you at the moment.
Yeah. So is exploring like what will remain. Probably not very much of what we know, and what will have changed. There'll be new types of vegetation. There'll be new evolution with nature, and then it's about putting people in that world, and then seeing how do we come back together as a community. What skill sets do you need? What do you need to find? What's useful? What's not useful? What's dangerous?
What's exciting for gamers to want to rebuild as well. That's all part of the utility that's going to be announced as well, which is exciting. Just to kind of follow on about the sustainability and where the world's going, and what we're going to be doing, obviously, in 10 years. Technology is obviously really, really important to this growth of the game. So I know, Ian, you've been on the forefront of finding a blockchain, finding what you want to have as a must-have, I guess, components for the blockchains in terms of sustainability. Can we go into the technology?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can. I mean, probably the first thing to say is, whilst an amazingly fun and engaging story, we actually wanted to focus on climate as a really key thing, because we all, obviously it's horrendous, this ecological disaster. But we're doing it to highlight that maybe we should all change, right? So, I think it's quite a nice thing.
I just bought some bamboo straws.
Yeah. It's, so that was a real key driver, I think. And in some respects, the story of the end and how people adapt to like things all falling apart has got some parallels with what we went through with COVID and what people were prepared to accept, and so we wanted to really show that, and we also wanted to confront this myth about blockchain being bad for the environment, or eventually being bad for the environment.
Yeah.
So the game that we'll pick will definitely need to kind of proof of stake blockchain. We're just assessing some options in that at the moment. We're looking at when the Ethereum 2 launch may happen, and whether we could do it all on that, or we're talking to people like Algorand and Tezos and different people about that. We're not like committing just yet, because at the same time, if we commit to the wrong blockchain, we can make a terrible game.
Yeah.
But definitely it's way up the priority list in terms of the choice. We can't do a climate disaster game and it actually be contributing to that outcome. So we're not going to do that. I do think there's another couple of things. So we've decided also that within the royalties that we're going to do in the NFTs and the smart contract, we're going to have a percentage that's going to go to climate projects, funding climate projects.
Fantastic.
So we were talking about that the other day. So 8%, I think it's going to be, of every sort of transaction will go towards that. And so we're going to plant trees and other climate stuff. So I think it is going to be a key pillar of what we're doing, actually.
That's really impressive. Have you chosen any initiatives yet, or is that to follow?
I think there'll be a lot of the tree planting stuff, and then there'll be some actual carbon removal schemes that are much more expensive, but are technologically quite interesting and stuff like that.
So it's watch this space. Amazing. Both of you've got incredible backgrounds. You know, between you, you've worked with the likes of Sony, PlayStation, BBC, Lego, Ministry of Sound, MTV. It's like so many names. You guys, let's hear your story. How have you ended up in Web3 gaming now?
Russ has got a much more impressive back catalog than me. Places he's worked in games. But
the people that you know in this space and the Web2 space,
I'm only joking.
Blown my mind, both of you, every single
he definitely in games. So you should talk about it, Russ. I mean, for me, I'm CEO at Emergent. My background, I've just run companies all my life, and some of those companies did a lot of work with PlayStation launching the consoles and Little Big Planet and a few of those, and that's really where I came into gaming and VR. But yeah, and I run the business, and Russ does all the amazing creative stuff. So Russ, talk about what you've done at
I suppose I always say I've been in the industry 25 years. I think it's actually longer. I think I froze that a few years ago. And I literally started colouring pixels when pixels were the thing, before even 3D games. But I've been at, Lego and PlayStation, and I think it was a PlayStation for over 10 years. But I suppose I've always been really attracted to games that have always been on the cutting edge, that have always been either new technology, reaching new audiences, pushing the boundaries of the platforms that they're on. So I've been involved in a lot of those sort of innovative sort of projects where we, if anyone remembers it, years ago, we did on PS2, we did an iToy game, which was a camera augmented reality game, a bit like a Wii game. They were hugely popular. And I think most people are probably too young to remember those now. But we went on to do AR projects at Sony for the PlayStation 3, working on, I got to work with some big IPs there, so working with J.K. Rowling and people like that.
That was for the spell book, right? You were telling me.
Yeah.
Amazing, so impressive.
That was, again, it's always been about new technology. We got drawn into, when PlayStation started to think about getting into VR and wanting to get into VR headsets, my team at the team that's focused on what is VR, getting all of the early demos out there on PlayStation, and one of the biggest, I think, titles that went out on PlayStation.
You're doing a lot on VR at the moment as well, I guess, with Maze Theory and Emergent Games, which is where the core is for your team, which is really, really impressive as well. We'll pop some links down for the VR projects that you've
Yeah.
worked on. I think that would be really, really exciting for people to have a look at, just to see what you've built in the past, I guess.
Yeah, and our building, so Peaky Blinders game is currently coming towards the
Amazing.
final stages of its development. Doctor
Have
Who
you determined
game.
whether Peaky Blinders is going to have an NFT drop of its own yet? It's obviously going to be Web 2.
So do you know what? We are basically currently talking to Banijay, the license holders that own it, about doing an NFT project, which I think could be good. We just need to really make sure that it's done with a sort of real strong utility to it, and a sort of community building. You know, I think gone are the days of just launching NFTs with a big brand and just expecting people to give you a load of money. You've got to really think about what's the added value for the people to hold it and stuff. But we are talking to them at the moment about that. I mean, one of our sort of our thinking around VR, AR, Web3 is that essentially they're all part of the metaverse, right? They're all part of at the forefront of that new way of playing digitally online. And the metaverse will exist as like things like Roblox and mobile and things that you interact with, but it will also exist at the sort of probably the more premium physical end in VR. And probably Web3 will become the layer that like feeds the metaverse and is part of that new revolution. So it's not out of the question that in the future we see a future of VR and Web3 all coming together. It's just about working out, is that 5 years away or 7 years away or 2, right? So it's difficult to predict. I think the biggest thing on technology is people can generally see something's powerful and something's coming, but what they can't really work out is the adoption curve rate, and it can be either faster or much slower than you expect.
Totally. And you've got games like Spellfire and Magic the Gathering, all card games that have kind of found it really, really difficult to enter into the Web3 space, because people have got these physical cards that they used way back when, and they're almost a bit like, why am I going to start purchasing new cards on the blockchain? It's a waste of the funds I spent back then, but I want them to have utility in these online games that I can play now. And a lot of, I guess, if you did some sort of NFT drop with Peaky Blinders and things like that, maybe the access wouldn't be full into the game, but there would be some sort of imagery that you could have, just almost just being.
I think if we do it, we'd take it totally separate to the game. Actually, I think if we did it, we would make it more like an access club for people desperate to know more about stories and characters and be part of a fan universe that they can all share there. I think there might be some utility in the VR game, but sort of nice extra bits, not the main paper.
I mean, one of the things I think the team are really good at is, so with Peaky, we work with the team that make the show and Stephen Knight to create our own story that really fitted within VR and that was going to make the best experience. We did the same with Doctor Who. I could see us sort of like being able to build on that kind of experience of being able to take those worlds and expand out on them. And some of that's feeding through to sort of like how we're running Resurgence. Is like we have a really strong team in narrative. They understand how to create a complete lore. You know, being able to start with the end, which is like a prelude to the fuller game, means that we can get everyone involved from a community point. We can get people engaged, and we can create a massive lore that will be the backbone for Resurgence.
You do have an amazing team. So you guys are mighty impressive, both of you, but the team as well. Let's give your team some airtime. They're a very impressive bunch.
So within the team, we have a whole spread across development, production, marketing and publishing. Stephen Huckle is our art director across the group. He's worked on, I mean, he's a bit like Russ. He's got like at least 30 years of experience in different things.
Old, yes, I think.
Yeah. Very experienced, but he's made like Need for Speed. Crikey, he's even made a game called Sensible Soccer that's like way back in the day. Lara Croft.
Wasn't he one of the creative art directors on The Sims and FIFA as well?
Yeah. Sims, not FIFA, I don't think.
Right, sorry.
Then our head of studio, guy called Phil White. He's been around the block, but was at Codemasters, a big, they make like the F1 games and all the racing games. I think he was one of the first people he was in at EA, and I think he basically helped launch online gaming there, like really for like, so that's obviously a massive thing, right? Very early on. And if you imagine how much online gaming it's a thing. So he went in there. Penrose is our chief commercial officer. He basically looks after our publishing and marketing team. You know, he's launched loads of massive titles whilst at PlayStation, including Gran Turismo that he basically ran for years as the product team and everything around that. So there's we're pretty comfortable launching and publishing games. Am I missing anyone out? And then John Atfield's like our CTO. He was at Codemasters, and has worked on a couple of MMO RPGs and stuff like that. I think that and then under them there's an amazing team of about 40 or 50.
So which in particular are the team behind this story plot? Because that's obviously where we're going with this at the moment, with the news feed that's coming out at the moment. I think the latest that's happened in Resurgence is there's been a outbreak of a disease, which is amazing. It sounds a lot like COVID. But
drift, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, drift though.
What's out for that?
So
that's pretty bad.
Who's organising the story plot? I love it.
So we're working with a writer, Tin Lebanon, who's been he's done a lot of sci-fi writing. He works for he's worked on a lot of comic work for a group called Titan, but he's also had a couple of his works turned into Netflix movies actually. So The Silence, I think, was a Netflix film. He's been working with us. He's actually just launched, I have to give a big shout out because he's just launched a new book called The Last Storm.
Oh, wow.
Which, interestingly enough, does have some ecological disaster hints towards it. So perfect for he was a perfect fit with us. He works with us, you know, each week. There's we have a narrative design team. So Catherine's been heading that up, working with our producer James Baines. As a studio, most people like Johnny, our concept artist, and Nikki and Nigel, they're all part of bringing that visually to life. There's a lot of workshops that go on during the week where people are debating story. We have scientific advice. So we have an expert that's talking about the actual science of what the world will look like in 1,000 years' time, whether these things are accurate or not. So even though, you know, we're obviously in that sci-fi space, this is all backed by real science, unfortunately. To the point that we were doing a piece about floods in Australia, in Sydney, only to hear that there were floods in Sydney. These things are all real escalations, and what we look at is what if three things come together. Like if it's not necessarily going to be about one thing. It's going to be about what happens if you have a blight. What happens if, you know, things that are coming out on the end.
We'll have wow, it's going to be exciting. I think there's loads of I guess the story is obviously super intense and well thought out, but the fact that it's all backed by science and kind of just proving its own way and paving its own path is quite daunting as well, but very exciting. And the fact that it's going to be sustainable, so we won't be making it too much of an imprint of ourselves. So maybe we should just dive into a little bit about you guys, what you do in your free time, what games you're both into, what sort of what really ruffles your feathers, I guess.
Russ, you should talk about the BAFTA stuff you do, right, and the award stuff and things like that, because I think that's
it's my only excuse to play games though, right?
That's exciting. I don't think I knew this.
No, literally, we just uncover new pieces of information as we delve deeper.
Well, I suppose part of my aged history is that I'm a member of BAFTA. So, you know, often if you get nominated or win, you get asked to become a member. And one of the things that's really great is that you get to be on a few of us get asked to be jurors. So
Wow.
each year they rotate the juries around. You get different themes. So you might be art or it might be narrative. But it does mean that I get to judge and I get to play the top sort of like tier games that everyone's waiting to.
Do you have to put a certain amount of hours into each of these
Oh
games?
God, yeah, you do. So
it's
an amazing award, and it has a lot of credibility because basically they have a big committee, and on that committee, you don't know what game you're going to have to represent, but you might be the one representing it. So if you haven't played them all and you don't know them all intensely and can't have a proper conversation, you're called out. So, but it does mean I get to play a lot. So. I don't get a lot of free time, strangely enough. But what I do play, things that I play tend to be really narrative-y type games. So I've been playing Hades. That's a great game. It's a bit like an old school platform reimagined with a modern take on Greek gods and a Greek god who kind of keeps getting banished. Basically, he dies every 5 seconds, so you have to figure your way out of each of the rooms. But it's done with a really cool art style, really cool narrative, great tone of voice. It's really funny.
Sounds like you like it.
Yeah, I love it. Disco Elysium as well. That's a great narrative game too. But
okay, cool. So there are quite a few games that you're just like keeping your eye on.
Yeah, I play a lot of the big commercial games as well, but they tend to be, you tend to be a bit more like, oh, how's that mechanic work? How's this? But
Russ, what would you say when you think about Resurgence? What would you see as the comparative titles so that people watching this can go, all right, yeah, it's a bit like this?
I suppose I was always a big fan of the Fallout series, and I think Fallout has an influence in the sense of that sort of like crafting and that building.
I've been asked that so times.
And I love Horizon Zero Dawns just for that. So again, that's probably an influence in the exploration, and the spectacle is probably our reference. And Valheim, which is a survival game, and it's actually it allows you to explore the world as a Viking. But again, that's got some great survival mechanics in it. That's quite a big influence. So getting to play a few survival games. And
do you see games that you like a little bit more because of their levels of statistics for avatars and I guess the different levels? And would you prefer to have something a little bit more basic, but you get more reign over the game? Or would you rather something where you were given all of these statistics and you had to work hard to sort of retrieve and achieve a certain standard?
We want to make sure that Resurgence is accessible to everyone. So it's got enough depth so that people can really get into the statistics behind crafting or farming. But we also want it to be a world where you don't have to spend 5 hours in this world. You could spend 5 or 10 minutes and enjoy it, and you'll get something out of it. So that is like looking at modern day gaming. The old MMOs used to involve like, you'd have to be involved for weeks or hours, and you'd have to really slog at them. For us, it's about looking at the way modern gaming is, and those 5 to 10 minutes that people want to invest in the game, and then the amount of time people talk in the community and share ideas and then want to carry them out. So we're looking at a lot of the modern sort of like approaches to sort of like how people play games, as well as how people might play games on a blockchain. Sure. And then what do NFTs bring to a game from a gamer's perspective and also from the community perspective?
So if you could sort of, say what sum up in sort of what is it that most excites you for the future of gaming and the future of metaverse?
So I think the most exciting things are, I love the idea that we'll actually be able to actually own something that I really care about.
Yes.
And have a real passion for.
I
love the idea that maybe publishers won't be in charge of games anymore, so that if communities build up around games and they really love them, they'll just run and they won't be reliant or closed down because a publisher has lost interest.
That's been heartbreaking for the amount of effort that's gone into AAA games previously in cinematic styles where you've really put your all in, and someone's just gotten bored or they don't really understand it in the depth that you do, so they've just dismissed it. That could be quite heartbreaking, I can imagine. Yeah,
there are some games that have lasted 20 years and they tend to be people that have focused on that just one thing and are dedicated to it. A lot of the bigger publishers will just switch and change. It won't necessarily even be just about profit. It'll be more about what's next, what's new. Just, you know, giving community ownership, I think, would be a huge change in gaming, because it's, you know, it's such a big culture.
Wag me. It's been so great having you guys on. This is probably one of the most exciting calls in YouTube videos me and Georgie have done. There's obviously loads going on the socials. The end is nigh, and we are having so many different things just pumping out, especially over the next few weeks, especially with the first drop. There's no official date yet, but super exciting. Thank you so much, both of you, for coming on.
I'd just say, like, that's been brilliant. Thank you for doing it. I'd just say to people watching this, there are going to be some of the NFTs available to competition winners. So, but you will need to actively participate in all the social channels and to do that. So definitely, if you're watching this, go on all the Resurgence game, Discord, Twitter, Telegram, because you're more likely to pick something up, get something for free if you do that. And we think they're going to be quite valuable eventually. So it might be worth it.
There's going to be a lot of hours into leveling up on the Discord as well. So we're gonna add all of those in. Definitely.
Yeah. Links below. We will be sharing those.
Great. It's been lovely. Nice to speak to you. We'll have a bit of an update in a month, probably.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's been great.
Cool.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you, Plutonauts, for watching, and we will be back with more from the galaxy of Pluto soon. Don't forget to give us a like,
Give us a share and subscribe.